Back underway here, and Scott Gibbs, who chairs the town's redevelopment agency, wanted to be able to update the council as to where things stand. This whole initiative started back in 2007 and resulted in a plan, a redevelopment plan, that calls for as much as 1 million square feet of development in the Branch Village District. But there remain a number of hurdles, implementation, and we are fortunate to have in the audience somebody who actually worked on the development of that plan, Nate Kelly from Horsey Witten. And so we're here to hear from you what the next step is. There's obvious potential for economic development, and the plan that we have is something that was embraced by the whole community. Planning board unanimously supported it. The town council had several unanimous votes supporting each step of the plan, and yet there's only been minor incremental implementation of the plan. So with that, I would like to turn it to Mr. Gibbs.
Relax, I promise not to be as long-winded as I typically am. I know Eddie's sitting on my show, you got the coffee. Before I begin, I just want to introduce a few people. John already mentioned Nate Kelly and Rochette Null, who's from the Horsey Witten Group, who were the original architects for the redevelopment plan. I also wanted to recognize Bob Knoll, who's on the redevelopment agency, Al Pachetti and Dr. Moyer on the Economic Development Commission. And I would also like to recognize a friend of mine who agreed to create some room in his busy schedule to come and back me up in case I get knocked down. And that's Colin King. Colin, as you all know, he's the principal at Peregrine Group, which is a project management, real estate project management company. He's also the chairman of the 195 Commission, and recognized by many as probably the most real estate expert in the state of Rhode Island. Is that okay for you?
I'd rather be the real estate expert in Manhattan.
Yeah, so we all would. Actually, I'd rather be in Austin.
Was that $24?
So what I'd like to do tonight, assuming this thing's actually worked, there we go, amazing. I am really a technology idiot, so this is like amazing stuff right now. There's 3 areas I wanted to cover. One is I wanted to provide everyone sort of a brief overview of where, just sort of remind everybody what the redevelopment plan is all about, at least in terms of some of the highlights. Then I want to talk a little bit about some of our problems and opportunities and our recommended actions. That's what I call call to action. And what I'm also going to ask as part of that for Colin to stand up and sort of give you that third-party outsider perspective of the real estate market and as it relates to the potential of Branch Village. And I'll try to keep this really short, assuming the technology works for me. First of all, the vision. What are the motivating factors behind the redevelopment district? One, of course, we want to advance, expand and diversify the town's fiscal base. The conversations we have tonight always comes down to tax dollars and our ability to fund our needs for the future. And first and foremost, economic development projects are to deal with that fundamental fiscal requirement. But also is to expand local and regional jobs. You know, we are part of a regional job base. Everyone likes to try to be parochial about that. But every time I drive into work at Highland Corporate Park, I think probably at least 1 out of every 2 cars driving in there are Massachusetts plates. So we truly are working in the regional labor market. But it's not just about our existing workforce, it's about our future workforce. And that's going to be an important theme to keep harping on here, because we're not just planning about for today, we're planning for the future. Most of us have children. I have 3 older children, 2 of them that are out of college, 1 is in college. One lives out of Rhode Island in the West Coast. The other one told me she's not coming back to Rhode Island, living on the West Coast. The other one, the only reason he's in Rhode Island is because he can't live without me, financially. But the fact of the matter is, we are losing our workforce, and we're losing our workforce for good reasons. And I think this is another point I wanted to make, because it also, I think, relates to this issue about keeping our future workforce, and that's creating a sense of place. that retains our residents, attracts new residents, and promotes a healthy, connected social community. And I really think that that's what Branch Village is all about. It's not just about the taxes, it's not just about the jobs, it's also about creating a sense of place in our community. So what have we accomplished today? I think everyone is pretty familiar with what the scope of the redevelopment agency district is. It really comes from Leeways all the way down to past the Branch Industrial Park. Slightly up to Wall Street includes all the Branch Park area down to 146. We've created a redevelopment vision, which has been developed and adopted by the town. That was previously referenced by Horsley Witten. We've done build-out and fiscal impact analyses, transportation improvement analyses. The town adopted a new zoning ordinance, both mixed-use 1 and mixed-use 2, that impacts this area, and a wastewater implementation analysis. So a lot in terms of planning has been done. Planning sets the foundation, but it doesn't translate into execution. Development scenarios were created. And I'm always very cautious when I talk about development scenarios, because typically development scenarios are grounded in what we know today. And the fact of the matter is, we'll talk about this a little later, we're not quite sure what's happening. Other than the fact that we've created some ranges and uses as it relates to commercial use between 80 to 100,000 new square feet, office between 250 and 600,000 square feet, industrial 340 to 560,000 square feet, 83 to 180 residential units with $1.8 million to $3.2 million in net tax revenue. Again, it's a moving target, but it's still a mixed-use zone. We're seeing right now, and Colin may even want to reference this, we're seeing a real pullback on the office market, but we're seeing a huge uptick in the manufacturing market right now. Very interesting what's happening. So let's talk about some of the realities, because whenever we talk about transformative economic development strategies, we always have the people that are sitting in the back saying, that'll never happen here. The fact of the matter is, being an economic developer is about being a change agent, and it's about believing in yourself. And I think that kind of attitude would have resulted in rivers not being moved in Providence, about the Providence Place Mall not being built, and a lot of other projects that requires vision. But you have to do that within certain realities. One is the economy. We have a high unemployment rate. We all know that. We're in Rhode Island constantly pushing the upper range of that. We have falling labor participation rates, population outmigration. That's not just a Rhode Island phenomenon, it is a New England phenomenon. New England lost over 500,000 people over a 10-year spread. So we are an outmigration region. However, some of that's been offset by international immigration. Declining family incomes. Gone from an average family income of from $54,000 down to $50,000. It's a frightening trend. And, quite frankly, a declining volume of economic development deals, which kind of relates to this whole issue about the potential of a Branch Village. That's declining on a national level. If you look at it in terms of New England, total economic development transactions that included 50 jobs or more, over $1 million, was only 2.2% of the national total. So things are a little bit of a struggle in New England. Real estate market, corporate behavior is definitely changing. Companies are attempting to lower their overhead costs, and they're doing that, quite frankly, by allowing for a mobile workforce. Aetna Insurance, for one, has 14,500 people now who are working at home, 14,500 out of 35,000 employees. That's saving the company $78 million a year of operating expenses. That's a trend that's happening, and I will argue it's discussions that are currently going on in the largest companies in Rhode Island right now in the corporate offices. There's got to be a way to lower the operating costs. Every person who chooses to locate outside of an office or work remotely saves the company $7,000 a year. But it's another issue too, and that's about companies trying to attract millennials. The millennials like mobility. They like to be able to work out of the office. When my son got his job in Portland, Oregon, the negotiation was not what he was getting paid. It was, I don't want to work in this office 3 days a week. I prefer to work out of coffee shops. He said, fine, work out of coffee shop. That's the new reality. And it's going to impact the issue of the real estate market, which is what I'm presenting here. The rise of the 1099 workforce. It's projected to represent 15 to 20% of the workforce in New York City. They're saying 1 out of every 4 workers is a 1099. Flexible workplace options such as co-working spaces are emerging, which are definitely different than the typical corporate real estate model that we historically look at. Big issue. We're not really paying much attention to it right now. National Association of Corporate Real Estate Executives is saying there's going to be a huge demand over the next 10 years on having to reposition big box retail. It is coming to a screeching halt. And a lot of communities, and we have a community next door to us, who's going to face those cold realities. A lot of big box retail out there, and there are no retailers to take it. And the reason that's important is because as they reposition that, it's going to go from retail to office or manufacturing, which really affects the overall supply-demand equation of the real estate markets. And there's this positive side. Yeah, there is positive news here. It's called onshoring of manufacturing. We are seeing that in spades right now. I've worked with several companies over the past year who have made decisions to not build facilities in China. They're saying that the cost of labor is going up high in China, that the labor turnover rates are increasing, that the cost of shipping is increasing, and all those factors have now affected the cost arbitrage advantage that China had, and quite frankly, there's also risk factors of political instability. So we are now starting to see a lot of manufacturers who are looking to invest, and including Rhode Island. In fact, there's 3 manufacturers right now that are kicking around in excess of 100,000 square feet in Rhode Island looking to make significant investment. That's very positive news. The qualifier to that is simple, and that is they're not our mother's old manufacturers. These are not manufacturers that are going to employ thousands of people. They are lean, they're very capital intensive, and they require very high skill sets for the new workforce. Power of workforce and corporate investment location decisions. It used to be, when I started off in this business 80 years ago, it was a big issue. If you could just basically locate the company, people will move to you. So you was always chasing the companies. That's not true anymore. The big companies, the innovative companies are chasing the workforce. And there's no other way to explain why Austin, Texas has become the #1 fastest growth real estate market in the country, and also one of the fastest population growth in the country. The new census data is because people want to live there. The young are flocking to Austin, and the companies are like Citigroup just made a huge tel data investment there, and their average salary is $140,000 a year. So, that's become a new factor in the economic development game. How do you attract people? And if you attract people, you'll attract the jobs, the companies. But in spite of all this negativity, the economy was so great, we probably wouldn't be even having this discussion. But in spite of a fundamentally changing economy, some communities, large and small, are being successful. And this begs the question, why? And the hypothesis is that communities with a vision for its future and it demonstrates deliberate action to achieve its vision will outcompete communities that don't. It's about building communities that retain and attract both the existing and future workforce. It's about differentiating your community in the sea of sameness. So our position is that the redevelopment agency strongly believes that the Branch Village Redevelopment District offers the opportunity to create a vibrant business, residential, and community node that will set North Smithfield apart along the strategically important Worcester to Providence corridor. And I'd like to reference an article I read back in the New York Times in 2011. I was talking about although there's a lot of conversation about people, the older people as well as younger people moving into urban America. And in fact, the census data seems to substantiate that. But the fact is that there are also a lot of people that are younger or maybe early 30s, upper 30s who are having families who are actually leaving urban America. And in fact, New York City has demonstrated that, and we're finding people that are looking up the Hudson Valley because New York is not a cheap place to live, and schools are somewhat questionable. So therefore, they're looking up the Hudson Valley and looking for smaller communities, but communities that have an urban flair. They want the urban amenities. They want the the coffee shop, they want the decent restaurants, they want walkable, bikeable communities, but they want them on a smaller scale. And therefore, it's actually providing a huge genesis towards a rebirth of many of the communities up the Hudson Valley. I think that scenario is very relevant for North Smithfield. So, what are our keys to success? Infrastructure, infrastructure, and infrastructure. It's the building blocks to any successful real estate development-based economic development project. Utilities, parking facilities, roads, and streetscape improvements to support the optimal use of real estate and to create a people-friendly, walkable, and bike-friendly environment are critical. Strategic investments in infrastructure sends a message to the business community, and that the message is that the public sector cares about this area. If that message is not sent, the investment development community does not look. There are numerous options that companies and investors have to invest their money. They're going to invest where they believe the public sector cares about that. And that's what the Branch Village project is all about. And I can say this, I live here, I've lived here for 25 years, I know it's not long enough to be called a resident yet, but I live here for 25 years, and I can say that if you drive down Branch Village, there is no message out there that the public sector cares. It looks worn, tired, and ugly. Successful projects like the Branch Village redevelopment project requires anchor projects. Anchor projects that jumpstart the market awareness and investment climate within the area. Until there is evidence that a specific location is on the move, it is difficult to get traction in this market of all markets. The purpose of anchor projects is to reduce investor stress. And I use as one example the project in our neighboring borough. This is in the Stillwater Mill Redevelopment District in Harrisville. I work a lot with the redevelopment agency there as an advisor. And when they were looking at that project and they put all the planning together and they got the redevelopment district established and they have the redevelopment agency put together, they knew they needed something to start, because if you recall what that site looked like before, it was tough. It was really, really tough. Today, it's totally different. It's starting to move, and it started with this project. And this was the redevelopment of the Clock Tower building into a mixed-use, affordable, and market-rate apartment project. It's an absolutely beautiful project. But what is really important here is the role that the town played to make this project happen. They actually bought the property. They first condemned it, and then as part of the condemnation process, the judge said, okay, can you guys just kind of try to work out a deal? And they ended up working out a deal and bought the property. But the town knew that if they didn't play that role, that building was not going to be redeveloped. The economics just did not work, and the owner had no aspirations to do that. Great project today. There's a couple other things that happened in the redevelopment district. Down the far right, bottom right, is their new library. It's not just a library, it's a community center. I just came there from a Burrillville Planning Board meeting, because Al Shan Kashmir is going to build a new building in town. And that actually happens here. They have Friday night concerts, they have children's events, but this is in the redevelopment district right next to the Clock Tower building. And on the top left is the pavilion. The town actually got a grant to build this pavilion. It's the home of the farmers market. Another project, pretty building, huh? This is in downtown Pasco, which is another redevelopment district that they have. This is a apartment project with some commercial downstairs vacant. The building is in really tough shape. It is a blighting condition on Pasco Main Street. The town actually got involved in the redevelopment district, and in the backside, you see those cars parked. There used to be an old warehouse that was falling apart. The town bought that warehouse and tore it down. They tore it down because, number one, it's ugly, and number two is we know that if we can get, in order to get investment, we have to have parking opportunities, so let's at least control that. And then they started working with Joe Garlick's group on the front side. Now, Joe Garlick's group is doing a major housing project in downtown Pasco. The town convinced Joe to extend that project into this site. And he's included that in his application to Rhode Island Housing, which we're hoping to hear in July. And this is what's going to happen. And actually, it's much bigger than this. This is a apartment complex upstairs with commercial downstairs. Joe's actually going to deed the downstairs commercial to the redevelopment agency. We're going to own it, and we're going to lease it out. He's actually going to continue this project across the street in the vacant parcel that's right on the river, which is what's called the old music hall site. And he's going to rebuild the music hall as it originally looked and build a bridge over the river to Well 1, which is a medical services provider which is growing rapidly and needs additional space. So, of all places, downtown Pasco is taking off, but the key message here is that the redevelopment agency, working very closely with the town, made strategic investments to help prime the pump to get investment to happen. So let's talk about the redevelopment district. In our opinion, what are the keys to success? Number one, sewers have to be extended into the redevelopment area if there is any possibility of redevelopment. If there are no sewers, you're not going to do it. It's that simple. And I say that as a developer. Two, the roadways in the redevelopment area must be upgraded, including streetscape improvements consistent with the redevelopment vision and consistent with creating an environment that's conducive to private investment. And three, we have to jumpstart redevelopment by marshaling an anchor project. An example, redevelopment of the former Tupperware ATP site, which is a serious blighting condition in the district. Sewers. Jeremiah and Associates did the design tours. We went in as we viewed those because we wanted to make sure that we had a second set of eyes on that. We've talked, worked with the Sewer Commission. Sewer Commission, yep, right behind me. Phase 2, alternate 2 is the preferred option. That's $3.295 million. That excludes the west side of the river. This is just the east side of the river, which is the idea of working both sides, but we have to focus our efforts at this point. The problem is that based on a typical sewer revenue bond, that's $48,000 per EDU. That doesn't work. So especially consistent with $18,500 per EDU was the last sewer project you did in town. So something has to be done, a strategy has to be devised to actually deal with that gap. Roads. Branch River Bridge and St. Paul intersection are on the 2013-2016 RIDOT Transportation Improvement Program list. That's an opportunity. Strategic opportunity to expedite design of the road improvements and leverage cost savings from the DOT initiative with the planned bridge and intersection improvements. The projected cost for road design and utilities on the engineering side is $270,000. Anchor project. Former Tupperware ATP mill represents a serious blighting condition in Branch Village, as well as, in my opinion, an unrealized redevelopment opportunity. The strategy needs to be devised to spark the redevelopment of this property. This could be what could spark the redevelopment of the rest of the district. So what's our call to action? We have to start working close together. The town council, the administration, and their staff, and the redevelopment agency. We cannot do this alone. We're all just volunteers. We need staff support to make this happen. But this, the Branch Village Redevelopment District, has to surface as the town's #1 economic development priority. It has to be that. If it's not that, it won't happen. I will guarantee you that. The town needs to initiate a partnership with the Rhode Island Department of Transportation and agree to fund the design engineering for the road and streetscape improvements, $270,000. The goal is to place these improvements on the tip list for execution in tandem with the bridge intersection improvements. Time is of the essence on this one. Town Sewer Commission and the Redevelopment Agency need to devise a funding strategy for the Phase 2, alternate 2 sewer improvements. Critical. And the redevelopment agency, in partnership with the town council and the administration, need to secure designation of the redevelopment district as a tax increment financing district. Now, we had talked about the TIF before, and we backed off the TIF initially because we found that most of the increased tax revenue being generated by the National Grid upgrade was already on the books. So there was no increment that we capture to fund the investment in, basically looking at that as the way to fund the gap on the sewer improvements. Nevertheless, we still believe that TIF is important. If not for phase one on the east side of the river, if we can get the development on the east side of the river to happen, it provides an increment to make the investments on the west side of the river. So we think it's low-hanging fruit. Let's get it done. At least that's one of the arsenals that we have for the future. And we need to develop a strategy to advance an anchor project with the redevelopment district. I am not going to talk about that here. This is not the right forum to talk about that. But I think that we need to have a very candid, strategic conversation as to how to deal with the anchor project in the redevelopment district, and we're all ready to do that if you're interested. So the proposed call to action is presented as a 3-year plan to jumpstart the redevelopment. There will be many tasks that we're going to have to accomplish over the lifespan of this project. Nevertheless, we believe that these are the kinds of investments that can actually start moving the redevelopment district in the right direction. So what I'd like to do before we turn it over to question and answers, I would like to have Colin come up simply to address the issue for you in terms of what is the market reality, the viability of this in the context of Rhode Island. So, Colin?
Thank you, Scott, Mr. Chairman, members of the Town Council. Again, Colin King. I'm a principal in Peregrine Group. We do develop and manage projects throughout the country. Here in Rhode Island, probably the most notable project would be Ocean House in Wash Hill, which is a $150 million oceanfront hotel. We also did Rumford Center in East Providence, which is a mixed-use residential and commercial mill rehab. Somewhat interestingly, we're in the market right now, coming out of the ground next month with a mixed-use multifamily and commercial project in Boston, which is our first project in Boston. So we're taking a very hard look and close look at two very different markets. I can absolutely attest to everything that Scott has discussed. The challenges that Scott outlined relative to where the economic development and where the user and investment community is going in 2014 and beyond is a very, very different place than it might have been even 10 or 15 years ago. The questions that, and the challenges that Scott identified are almost exactly the same challenges that we have in the 195 district. 195 has the benefit of significant infrastructure investment on behalf of the federal government in the state of Rhode Island, but we have remaining infrastructure investment that's necessary in order to make our particular parcels pad ready. We need to build parking structures. We need to figure a way to move people in and around the city of Providence. So the challenges are different because of its location, but the point of infrastructure is the correct one. When companies are evaluating where to locate, when investors are evaluating where to invest, time is everything, and predictability is everything. There's a term we use in our industry called pad ready, meaning that the pad site is, the roads are in, the sewers are at the lot line, we can plug into a gas main, we can plug into telecom service. In many ways, it's what Highland Corporate Park and Scott himself did so very well in northern Rhode Island. We do not have a lot of office demand in Rhode Island. Quite frankly, to Scott's point, there's not much office demand in Boston. The office use is on profound decline. Many of us experienced snow days this winter. None of us shut our offices down, and all of us got stuff done because we don't need to be in an office to get things done. So you're seeing a sea change in corporate behavior as it relates to the amount of space allocated to office use. We're also seeing a sea change, as Scott described, as to where they're located. Employers are indeed going where employees are. So I think the days are gone, as much as we're delighted they're here, of an Amica, CVS, kind of locating their corporate campus in a setting. In fact, we're seeing some of the retrenchment from that model. One may remember Pfizer looking hard at Rhode Island and New London, Connecticut. If we went to New London, Connecticut today, there would be 0 Pfizer employees after $2 billion of investment by Pfizer. They all went back to Boston and to Cambridge. So it's critically important that we recognize this model of economic development that which these large corporate campuses kind of tied to better communities is very, very different, we think, going forward. It's a privilege to be in sort of the first, America's first, planned industrial community. So North Smithfield has an interesting history of going from a very, sort of dense in its own pockets, industrial milieus, to a better community than many of you. In fact, I grew up in Rhode Island. I always thought as a rural community. Never in my mind did I think of it as a corporate center, as an industrial community. But as a result of its history, its location, North Smithfield is indeed a perfect location. And you have some anchors already. The Halstead Mill down the street looked very much like the mill in Burrville only 5 or 6 years ago. So you have the beginnings of an anchor. It's full. It works. You have a wonderful, wonderful downtown, and you are indeed in that center market between Boston and New York. And your proximity to Worcester and 495 is also a supreme benefit. So, I think urban light is how North Smithfield could position itself. You're not going to be downtown Providence. You're not going to be, you can kind of leverage, I think, what you have already and create a very special place, very pro-growth oriented space that has multifamily apartments, that has office use, that has some of these industrial uses that are banging around without having an adverse impact on your community in terms of how it feels and how it looks. I think when we talk about growth, at least from my perspective, growth is population, growth is jobs, and growth is activity, both retail and otherwise. It doesn't have to have an adverse impact on the current quality of life, especially when we look at Branch Village and where it's located, because it's basically in a perfect place not to change how people function in this town. I'm happy to answer any questions, but I think I don't envy your task having to balance, having to fix your air quality in your schools, while at the same time looking at how you grow your town from an economic and tax-based perspective. But I hope very much, I'm confident you can strike that balance because you have this green piece of dirt. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Thanks, Colin. It's really interesting because Colin and I were talking and I was asking him to come here. He asked me some questions. One is, how long does it take you to get to Providence from your house? Okay, I drive a little fast. I said I'm in Providence in 20 minutes at the absolute max, assuming I'm not, driving at 8:15, 8:30 coming into the city. And he said, well, how about Worcester? I said, I go to Worcester a lot. There's a little brew pub down there I like up there. I said, oh, I think it's 20, 25 minutes. I'm there. Boston, I go to Boston more times than I want to make now that my daughter's at Simmons. But Boston, as long as I'm doing a rush hour, 55 minutes. And when you really look at it like that, this community is really strategically located. It has locational advantages that most communities don't. And the reason why I used the projects in Burrville is not as trying to, I love Burrville. I do a lot of work with these guys. They're a great town to work with, great leadership, town council's phenomenal, town planner is second to none. But it's Burrville, it's Harrisville, it's Pasco. The access is not very good, but yet they're doing big things. So can you imagine what North Smithfield can do? So that's it. We'd be more than happy to entertain any questions, but again, the main point is we wanted to just refresh everyone's mind about what the redevelopment plan was all about and present to you and challenge you on some things that we think you need to do, that we need to do to be successful. If we want Branch Village to be successful. That's it. 40 minutes.
Questions? I know we also have some folks with us this evening who have a particular interest in the sewers in Branch Village because you are living in homes that have issues with wastewater, and you've been patiently waiting for the town to take some action.
Yep.
And while the town wouldn't be able to necessarily do something specifically to address just the residential component, if by making a broader investment in infrastructure in Grange Village, you're able to benefit from that, that's a plus. And I hope that we're able to do that. I know that DEM has been after the town to say, you know, what are your plans? We need to move on this. You promised. And I think we need to take a close look at what we have available to work with. And I know that we've, with the help of the town finance director, we've looked at the sewer enterprise fund. There is substantial funds that are sitting in that account that are doing nothing for the town. And they were built up over a number of years from ratepayers who connected from outside of districts, paying a $5,200 fee, and this money has built up. Now, I know we need to maintain a certain level of reserve for maintenance purposes, but I think we need to take a close look at how we can leverage some of those funds to help close the gap and to have a town investment in infrastructure in Grange Village, because I think, as Scott pointed out, the individual EDU cost is $50,000 essentially per home, and that's not going to work. We know it's not going to work. You know it's not going to work. And so we've looked at different ways of doing this. You know, one way, and I'm glad we have some expertise when it comes to ordinances here. It used to be the town assessed sewer costs by linear foot and land value. And then we switched to an EDU model, which is equivalent dwelling unit model. And I think that in a district like Grange, where you've got a mix of uses, some large corporate and some postage-sized properties, that it makes sense to do an assessment based on linear foot and land value. Because when you look at a site like the ATP site, there seems to be much more to be gained by having that infrastructure serve that property. And so that could be one way of helping to close that gap. And I think the other way is that the town needs to step up and be prepared to make an investment in the infrastructure as Scott had outlined, not just in the sewer infrastructure, but in the transportation infrastructure. I think that being a state road, that would be done by DOT. But in order to advance that and to get DOT to prioritize it, many communities find that it's helpful to do the initial engineering, and that helps to accelerate the process of getting your recommended project on the tip list. So I don't think we're going to make any decisions tonight about the sewer enterprise fund, but I wanted to at least start that discussion, because it seems crazy to not be leveraging that to develop economic growth. I don't know if anybody has any comments, any thoughts. Town Administrator?
Just to let all of you know that we did go to Rhode Island Clean Water Agency, and we have been approved for $3 million for that project. So it's a matter of signing on the dotted line, and then, prior to signing, figuring out a way to pay it back. So that is at the ready if we want to do something with that. I just wanted to let you know that we have gone through that process with option 2, similar to what we've been talking about for a while. We went ahead and we applied for it, and we got notification last week that we've been approved.
And do you know what the timetable is when we have to pull that trigger to?
I think we have 30 days to sign, and so it would be within 30 days.
I happen to work in the DEM building. I don't work for DEM, but I do run into Jay Manning at the coffee shop, and he'll always ask me, how are you coming with that sewer project? Because they have been pressing the town to get this thing addressed, and we want to do it. We just have to do it in a way that's going to be fair, and it's going to make it affordable, because it's $50,000 per EDU. So my thinking is that we need to pull together representatives from the Sewer Commission. I'm glad Mary Ellen, the chairman of the Sewer Commission, is here. The Redevelopment Agency, the town planner, and I know that Horsey Whitten has already done some analysis on the alternatives, and perhaps consider modifying the ordinance to allow for a different assessment approach depending upon the type of district that you're sewering. So if we're talking about a conventional subdivision where it's all equal-sized lots, it's all residential, maybe the EDU model is the approach to go there. When you're talking about a district like Greenwich Village, where you've got so many different types of lot sizes and uses, it may make sense, and I'm not the expert on the sewer ordinance, but it may make sense to approach it on a linear foot and land value approach, because that alone will bring down the individual homeowner assessment. So I'm open to any and all suggestions. I know that we've been talking about this for the better part of 7 years, and in particular for the last couple of years, we've been talking about the situation on Andrews Terrace, wanting to get this resolved for everyone. But I think unless we pull a small group together that has reps from the Redevelopment Agency, Economic Development Commission, Sewer Commission, to bring a proposal before the council, we're just never going to pass go.
John, I'd just like to make one comment about that, and that is, from an economic development standpoint, the sewers really are going to be solved by one or two approaches or both approaches. One is, the EDU approach is illogical in economic development. That is completely illogical. To think that a home is going to pay the same connection fee as a site that can be redeveloped for commercial use, it doesn't make sense. Secondly, if you start to look at that, you still probably going to have a gap. And something's going to have to be used to fill that gap to bring that connection fee into a reasonable level for the homeowners. So it's really rather simple. Find the gap and take a look at the formula, because they don't work.
Bingo.
Scott, what was your cost for the alternate two?
I think it was
3.2. 3.2.
We actually, in working with Horsley Wendy, they cut costs about $279,000 out of the original estimates after they took a look at the engineering.
Okay. But will we be charged for that engineering too also? The
Well,
engineering work you're doing, is that?
no, we already paid for that out of the EDC.
Oh, okay.
And we hired Horsley Wendy to take a review of that. So they haven't done any definitive engineering. We just wanted a second set of eyes.
Okay.
And we also can save some money too if we coordinate this with the road improvements. Then we're going to save some money that we have to incur to excavate for the sewer lines. So there's ways to manage it if we can kind of bring this all together at the same time.
Wonder if Nathan, Russ, if you have any comments on particularly of the sewer issue we've been discussing, ordinance, EDU, linear foot, the various plans that we've looked at, the options.
Just quickly, because I know we've taken a lot of time on this, but I just think, just to reiterate, moving forward, I think if you were to consider revising the ordinance, I think you start with the numbers. And like you said, it just would seem easiest to do a few different approaches just to see where the numbers fall. You could do a linear foot model, site area, site value. There are other models that include pipe size, water meter size, different ways to try to manage those costs. You have places in your existing ordinance with the EDU that could definitely be adjusted. And I think it's a matter of laying out all those options, seeing which ones are the most equitable, seeing which ones close that gap the best in terms of what Scott's talking about, weighing your options, and then if that's the best fit for Greenwich Village, then the ordinance should reflect that.
I don't want to leave tonight without at least having the discussion about the fact that there's going to be a cost for any rewrite of the zoning ordinance. If we're even open to doing that, there's going to be a cost for that. And if we're talking about getting some of this work started, I know that we don't have much, if anything. Well, the contingency fund we have for infrastructure is now down to zero as a result of a vote that just took a little while ago. But that doesn't mean that we don't have to prioritize this and figure out a way to do it. I don't have the answer as we sit here, but I don't want to leave from this meeting and then everyone just say, okay, well, I guess we didn't really make any decisions. We're not going to, we don't have any opportunity to get this done. So I'm appealing to my colleagues and appealing to others who have some knowledge about how we can move this thing forward.
Mary Ellen Sheridan, 7 Duane Court. I think the key in this whole project is that sewer enterprise fund. If you can use that or a portion of it, then that would actually set up the money, and then you could coordinate it with the roads, and then I think, and then you could also adapt the ordinance to make it affordable. But I think the key to this whole thing is the sewer enterprise fund.
Do we know, one of the questions I have is, and I don't know if you'll have this answer right at the top of your head, but whether or not the sewer enterprise fund would be able to fund the rewrite of the ordinance?
Yes.
Because that would seem like a logical place to work from.
Right, but
So-
before we want to spend any money doing that, we want to, put the whole plan, have a complete plan.
Yeah.
So, but that's a good idea, because we're in the process of working with a group right now on a proposal for the ordinance changes that need to be in there that we've determined, there's some minor mistakes and things along that line. But, who could find out about the sewer enterprise funds? I know you went through all that work, and, thank you, but.
We have, what do we need to know?
I think that the solicitor did take a look at the town's charter and the sewer ordinance to determine whether some of those fund balances could be used for expansion purposes outside of a given district. And I don't know if
Yeah, I did look, and there was one section, and I just don't recall it, that identified what it could be used for. But it was, the sewer enterprise fund, I believe, can be used after.
Yeah, because these are the funds right here, there's 4 funds.
Right.
So I don't know, it's not written in the ordinance about the sewer enterprise fund. But, because that's almost $2 million in there.
1.9, and it's doing nothing. It makes no sense for me to have it sit there when we could be having it work for us in so many different ways. We could do microloans to small businesses, we could do anything, and, I think it's time to look at that now. I don't know what interest rate we're getting, but it certainly would not be, whatever we use it for in terms of economic development and environmental issues that we have. I think it's certainly much more valuable to us than sitting in a bank account.
so. I know the sewer commission has its next meeting on the 16th.
Correct.
And I just wonder whether this could be on the agenda to have a discussion with the sewer commission about a recommendation to come back to the council for utilizing a portion of those funds to get some of this process started.
Provided, I can put that on the agenda, I'm working on that. I know the person who does it. Provided Mr. Lombardi would be okay with that, too.
Sure. I'll email you my research.
Okay.
Does anybody in the council have a concern about proceeding in that direction? Okay. So we'll
Yeah. Okay, that's the first thing. And the second thing I heard Scott saying that the Tupperware building is key to the whole project. However, it should be clear that we're only going to sewer the right side, if you're coming into Greenwich Village, so the Tupperware building will not be sewered. Right?
I think he wants to address that.
Yeah, I want to address that.
Okay.
I think the concern is that what you don't want to do is extend sewers to the Tupperware building right now, because you're only rewarding bad behavior.
You want to keep it on this side.
Yes, but when they design that bridge should be designed to allow the sewer pipe to go across it,
Right.
and therefore the connection would not be difficult to make, but you would make that connection only when you had a developer who was in tow, who was ready to invest, and that's part of the game.
So,
And I'd also emphasize too, and Mary Ellen, this is not directed to you, please, it's just from years, see the gray hair? It's just from years of working in government, or around government. College is getting a lot of very money. That's what happens when you're you're losing hairs too. It is, we all have our respective, committees and boards and commissions, but let's please address this issue, not in silos. We really need to have a collaborative group of all parties, making sure that we're communicating nonstop on this thing if we really want to make it happen. because that's typically not how government works. But I think it can work that way, if you just make it a priority.
Oh, that's fine. And so what you're saying is the bridge across the leeway is gonna be, reconstructed again?
It's on the tip list for 2013 to 2016.
I think I spent half my life in North Smithfield, the detour on the bridge. That was one of the things I wondered in the last project, because when they were doing phase 1A and 1B, the bridge was under construction. And I know Mr. Thurb, we all questioned why, if they were gonna build Greenwich Village, why they didn't do it then.
But there was questions about the pipe at that point too.
So, okay, yeah, so I think that's key right there, the funding. And you answer the question about that. And Mr. Lombardi, will you, just send me an email on that?
I will.
And, Madam Administrator, will you come to the sewer meeting? Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Ellen. Anybody else have any final comments, questions?
My name's David Moore and I live on Andrews Terrace. I have a question, obviously, about my neighborhood. I heard discovered about through the town that through the Greenwich Village revitalization program, they're actually thinking about taking Andrews Terrace out and making it into a scenic overlook to take a look at Branch River.
I'm seeing shaking heads.
Yeah, well, no, I heard, I need to know.
Yeah. I have not heard about
No, okay,
that, so.
that's good.
Well, I think the last thing we want to get into is eminent domain.
Yeah, we don't want to have,
You don't want it to do eminent domain in residential,
That's my point.
Question was whether that Andrews Terrace would be a better entrance to Brickell's property. And the answer is, on the 1999 wetlands map, it was doable. There was some sharp turns, but with the delineation in 2013 for the next Sun project, it was clearly undoable. So, rest that.
Thank you all for making the trip to North Smithfield to help us sort through this issue. I feel like for one of the first times in a long time we've set a direction. We have some very specific homework assignments to do by April 16th, and I hope to put this back on the agenda for an update so we can once and for all move this forward. And thank you for your
Thank
patience.
you.
One more thing, could we get a copy of new updates for the alternate to the engineering?
We didn't do any engineering, we just did a review and cost
Okay.
adjustments.
So we get an
Thank
update
you.
on that?
Mary Ellen, I'll forward that to you.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. President, if I may, so we are making a commitment on the 16th that the redevelopment agency, the sewer commission, myself, and who else?
Well, I think at a minimum, that the sewer commission is going to, at its April 16th meeting, take up the issue of whether to tap into the sewer enterprise fund, and what the sewer commission's recommendation would be, whether they feel that there's a certain amount that should remain in there as a reserve balance, how much it would be prepared to leverage, and then come back to the council with a recommendation.
Is that how you see it, Mr. Gibbs?
Well, you paid attention.
I didn't.
Or you could get away with that.
For the 16th, should we all get together, should the sewer commission, the
Absolutely.
EDC, I think we should all be in the same room and talk more than just the funding or a recommendation, because then the next thing the sewer commission does is give a recommendation, we have to wait 2 more weeks, we come here, then we have to wait 2 more weeks, and they have a meeting once a month, and
Right.
now we're talking May and June, and I would, if you're agreeable, I'd rather just get together that night and hash it out in public and talk about what we have for options and then just start nailing them down.
So what I'll do is I will put on the agenda, I'll have a discussion amongst the sewer commission as one for the the enterprise fund,
Okay.
depending on the information from Mr. Lombardi. And then the second one will have a group discussion.
Okay. Great, thank you.
One final thought is this issue of moving to a different assessment model. It would be useful to know, and I don't know how much we can do in advance of the meeting on the 16th, but it would be useful to know how that will impact the average property owner, homeowner, commercial property, because that will have some impact on what the delta is. And if any of that can be even done on sort of order of magnitude basis, that would be very useful. With that, we'll conclude this topic, and I once again thank you all for making the trip and helping us to sort through this issue.
Thank you.